Hello, everyone, and welcome to ImRecruitable TV, bringing you the unfiltered, no BS information and advice on college sports recruiting. I'm your host, Tarek Merchant. Alongside with me is my sidekick, Jon Sklenar.
How's it going, guys?
All right, today on episode 4, it's all about finding the right fit college. We're going to talk in detail about that. It's a big topic because this is really setting yourself up to make sure that you have a great college career, both academically and athletically. So without further ado, I guess we can get into the show, right?
Let's get it started.
Okay, so number 1 is setting the foundation up, which is setting your criteria, okay? And in order to set a criteria, this is something people don't normally do. And it's super, super important to make sure that you not only find the right fit, but you are going after the right schools, you aren't wasting any time, and that you are spending all your time doing the research that you need to make the best decision possible.
Right.
So Jon and I, for those of you that don't know, we played college tennis together, right, Jon?
Yes, we did.
Both of us landed at Western New Mexico University, and then I transferred after 2 years. And I transferred for reasons outside of finding a good fit. But initially, I did find a good fit. And maybe we should just talk about our experience first, which is, Jon, like how did you come about making sure WNMU was the right place for you?
Well, it ended up being the right place. I did graduate from there. I was there for 4 years. So I didn't transfer out like you did for your specific reasons. But prior, when I was going through the recruiting process, it really came down to, my budget that my family had. Obviously, the athletics where I would play on the team, and kind of, I still wanted to improve my tennis game after college. So be on a strong team that I can play on, and also whether it had my major or not. I ended up graduating with operations management, kind of like a business degree. So, it was pretty easy for me as far as that goes. Many schools offer these types of majors. When I came down to narrowing down my preferences, pretty much came down to 3 schools. I had Niagara University, which is a D1 in New York. I had Gonzaga U, a D1 in Washington State, and then Western New Mexico, which was a D2 in New Mexico State. So when I looked at, my own preferences, the budget was slightly better for me at Western New Mexico. Had to pay a little bit less, not a big difference, but I looked more into it. The climate there, obviously, all year round is super nice. Also, I took a more in-depth look at their schedule. When I looked at their schedule, a lot of traveling to California, Arizona, Texas, Colorado. They also had, their conference tournament in Hawaii at the time. They were in the Pac West Conference. So these things kind of drew my attention, and I've always wanted to travel throughout these states to begin with, and I just decided to go that route, and I ended up having best 4 years of my life. Got a degree, got some great tennis out of it, good coaching, good experience, met good people, still with people till this day, as right beside me, you. So we've had a relationship for over 20 years. So yeah, it all worked out in the end, and I had a very good experience.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I similarly found the right fit, but now we know so much more than we used to know, and we can share this knowledge and some of the mistakes we made. At the same time, I think both of our parents did a great job with some of the things we're going to talk about here, like the budgeting and the academic requirements and setting our athletic goals and stuff. And then we obviously got some of our preferences, but I'd probably say that for me, I was very flexible, and I think you were too. We were just very appreciative and happy to come play, sports in the US, and we were going to love every experience, I think, for the most part.
To get that college experience, right? That college athletic experience is just on another level. So
yeah. And so let's talk about this criteria. And so we've developed this method or understanding, and I dissect everything. I like to strategically look at how people can make best choices. And so, we put our heads together and we said, okay, you got to set a criteria, right? So like, there's three things: the college budget, the academic requirements, and the athletic goals. Your first three things, which are what I call non-negotiables. They are the foundation of how you can help yourself find the right fit, because if you don't have the right budget and you don't have the right academics and athletics, then nothing really falls together. So
Right.
I think we need to go through each of them, starting with the college budget. And the most important thing to start off with is, what is your family's maximum budget that you're able to spend for the right college? And John and I always talk about this, because as questions come up and as people go through recruitment, I think they fail sometimes to actually understand what that budget may be and realize that if the right school came about versus what they want as their budget, right?
Right.
It is important to set. So, if what I recommend families do is, I think the parents need to sit down and they need to say, okay, look, if the best school, let's say, your dream schools, are the highest ranked schools in the nation, the Harvards, the Stanfords, the Dukes of the world, that are like, maybe I'd be willing to pay the entire amount. Maybe I'd be willing to pay upwards of $70,000 to go to these schools. If that's the case, then that needs to be your ceiling. But what you want to spend, you can also write that down and certainly look for those options. But you don't want to pigeonhole yourself where you start thinking about how much you can spend down the road, because that confuses your student athlete and also the coaches, and it makes it more confusing for you to realize what can be an opportunity or not.
Right.
So like, sitting down, coming up with that budget, and that's not to say that budget can't change. So like, if you decide to set that, let's say in grade 10, sophomore year, and you're like, okay, look, we as a maximum would be willing to spend $50,000 all in. And I'm talking about room, board, tuition, everything. So if that's the case, and all of a sudden you get a raise with your job, or things change and there's extra money available, and now that budget can increase, well, then you just, change your criteria for budget. But, I think the biggest challenge that people face is when they don't know it at all, and then they start going after schools, and there's certain schools that, the maximum they can offer you is a small scholarship or academics. And then all of a sudden, you don't know if you can even go there. You spend 2-3 months or longer. And then later on down the road, the kid talks to the parents or vice versa, and they realize it's not even possible. So Right. You've actually wasted a lot of time. The next thing is the academic requirements. What do you want to study? Nobody, as John mentioned at the beginning of him finding the right fit, you said that you studied operations management. You clearly wanted to do a business degree. I clearly wanted to do business too in college. And so if a school didn't have a business program or something that I would have liked to study, then it's really not an option. So you got to know, you got to set those criteria. And if you're not sure right now, that's okay. But, if you're interested in even a category, whether it's business or science or psychology or it's agriculture, even the major category can help you narrow down and understand where you might fit. But if you're undecided, that's okay too, because maybe down the road, you'll start to figure out where you do, and then you can add that to your criteria. But maybe you'll also consider more than one major. That's also fine. But you got to try to put something down on paper so that you can start to narrow down some searches. Like if you're definitely not going to study, aeronautical engineering, then, or you don't want to do engineering, you don't want to do business, you don't want to do certain categories, and at least eliminate those.
Right. At the end of the day, it's gonna help you narrow down your choices, right? So even if you're undecided your junior year, it's fine. Again, like you're saying, but then going into your senior year, you might have decided what you're trying to get into, and this could eliminate some of the schools you have been talking to or looking at just because the major's not there. So it can really help narrow down those choices. For
sure. And the third thing that we find is critical, and setting the foundation, is the athletic goals. So what type of experience do you want as a student athlete? Like, it doesn't matter what sport you're playing. The question is really, what experience do you want? You got a lot of athletes have set out goals. It could be, I want to win a conference championship. I want to win a national title. I want to be a starter on my team for 4 years. I want to be an All-American. Whatever it may be, whether it's you have a good idea of the goals you want or not, you still have to ask yourself some questions, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, a majority of student athletes want to play, right? So, finding the right fit in that sense would be finding a school that you're actually going to play. There's a lot of strong teams out there that you might find yourself in a position of battling for that last spot or possibly not even playing. So it's something that you need to, do your research on and make sure, you're able to do that unless if you have other options.
Yeah, 100%. So the questions you might ask yourself are, do you want to play right away? Like,
right.
Do you want to be an impact player? So for the audience is an impact player means somebody who really has an impact on the team, right? Someone who's going to be not only a starter, but someone who's going to be like a superstar on the team. If you're looking to be a superstar, then that's fine. Are you trying to fight for a roster spot and say, I want to develop and I want most of the team to be better than me and want to fight for that spot? Or do you want to start on the bench and say, I'm willing to be on the bench for a year or two and work my way into the lineup? Or do you want to be a walk-on player? And for those listening, a walk-on player means someone who doesn't get a scholarship or doesn't have any aid there, just walks onto the team either through a tryout or the coach is saying, yeah, you can walk on without any scholarship obligation on the athletic side. That's also fine, but you have to understand how that walk-on opportunity is at that school. Are they invested in you or not? And if you walk on, where do you fit on the team? Are you a third string, quarterback? Are you a fourth string? Are you not even someone who's going to travel? Are you just someone who's going to practice with them and you're a long ways away from making that team? All of these situations are okay, but you really have to identify what you want. And if you're going to consider all the above, that's okay too. So you just have to make a list of that.
Right.
And so these three factors here are going to set your basis of which schools can help to be the right fit or not. Now, there's one other section here that we've put down as number 4, and that's your personal preferences. And these personal preferences, John and I feel that they're negotiable, right? So they're things like the size of the school, the location, what division they play. So I thought you made a really interesting point that I want to touch on, is that you gave up 2 Division I opportunities for a Division II opportunity because financially those 2 schools did not fit what your family was, able to afford for the most part, right? Or was kind of a better financial fit, right?
It was a little bit less. Okay, it wasn't a make or break as far as the finances or the budget went. The athletic level was the same. Maybe a little bit higher up in the Gonzaga lineup, but overall, all teams had good tennis, strong teams, good coaching. So then again, it was down to the personal preferences. Do I want to be, farther away from home or closer? The climate, again, New Mexico, dry, heat, can play all year round, whether it was close to the tennis courts or not. Again, these little preferences, and then the schedule, going to Hawaii. So certain things like that. So I really did my research.
Yeah. You're not going to get everything that you want.
No.
And so, but you do have to have what's most important. And for athletes out there, 99.9%, education is really number 1. Making sure that you don't go in serious debt and have massive student loans, or you don't put your family in financial trouble. The other thing is that you want to have a great student athlete experience because that's why you're going there. So those 3 things are so important that you have to give. Those are non-negotiables that you have to give up. What are the negotiables? So if you don't find a school with 10,000 students or more and there's 5,000, can you deal with it? Possibly, yes. Location wise, again, is it not the ideal location, but can you deal with it? Yes. The division, there's great, competitive sports amongst all the divisions, and is it good for you, and so on. So, you know, it's interesting because in one side you're an athlete and you want to find the best school, but on the other side you're going to college. So it's very different than being drafted, let's say in the pros and stuff. Like if you compare like pro athletes and you say, okay, you go into the NFL draft, for example, like you get drafted by a certain team, like you get drafted there. You know, there's obviously, I watched a little video about Eli Manning and his situation when he got drafted. He didn't want to go to the Broncos, I think it was. But you know, aside from those little things from a superstar, like you get drafted and that's where you go. In college sports, you have to be very understanding of the academic criteria because it is really number one. And so you have to make sure that aligns up. And of course, you're not getting paid to play, or at least not yet. So you've got to make sure that you can afford it and it's not going to be a burden.
Right.
All right. So if you set up those things, what's the next step? Okay. Got to document it. Got to put it in writing. Too many families, again, talk about this. They may listen to this show and say, yeah, you know what, Tarek and Jon, you guys are saying some good stuff. Okay, we'll do this thing. We'll do this process. They talk about it as a family once, twice, and then that's it. But, you know, I think it's really, really important to put it in writing, put it down on a paper or on your computer, wherever, and you can reassess it. Not only will the family know what's going on, but the athlete knows what's going on. You can refer back to this sheet every time you're going through the process. You can update it as needed and make sure that every time you're going to a college that, you know, you're, whether a coach is reaching out to you or whether you're building your target list, that you're able to look at your sheet and say, does this potentially match up to my criteria?
Right.
Okay. So moving on now, the big question, right? Create a list of target schools. Like, how am I going to build this list? Well, look, you got your criteria now. You got it on paper, right? So now you can start adding the schools that you feel like you meet your criteria. Now, you may not know everything about the criteria, but if it fits, like, you know, you may not know for sure if you fit athletically. There's certainly ways to try to figure that out, but you definitely can put it on the list and figure it out, right? By contacting the coach and seeing if it could be an athletic fit. There's certainly ways to know financially, you know, if it possibly could be a fit or not. Again, but contact the coach if it's scholarship related or not. That's a way to figure it out. And then on the academic side, that's the easiest side, I think, because you can actually go online and start looking at the, you know, majors and the different departments at the university.
Right.
I also think that it's very, very important. I'm just going to throw in a tip there, is that we talked about contacting college coaches in one of our shows already, but episodes. But, you know, when you are contacting coaches, there's a lot of fear behind being upfront with coaches and talking to them about your budget. And coaches sometimes ask you what your budget is up front. I think they're doing a better job of that, because if their school costs a certain amount of money and they're certain, you know, that's what they're going to be able to sort of work with you on, then they might ask you to make sure they're not barking up the wrong tree. But I also think it's very important for the athletes and the family to ask that question early on. It doesn't have to be the first thing that comes out of your mouth, but I think there's a way to say it, to be like, look, you know, like, this is what we're really looking to pay, or what would it cost me? You don't even have to say what you want to pay, because some people want that negotiation bargaining power. I totally get that. So they might just say to you, you might just go to the coach and be like, look, you know, what kind of scholarships do you have? What do you think it would look like from a player like me? And this actually goes back to our episode on building a good player profile, because if you give the coach everything that they need in the player profile with all the attachments and documents, then they were going to be able to come back to you very quickly with at least a ballpark and understanding of where you might fit. And so what you're trying to establish is that after scholarships and financial aid and academic money, whatever's available at the school, that you're not looking at a school that might cost you 50 grand and your budget, not meaning what you want to pay, but what you can afford to pay is 25,000. And it's like not even reachable. So you want to avoid those situations. And I think there's a way to connect with the coaches and say that. And to be honest, like the way I would do it is have that open discussion very, soon after an interest is, hey, coach, like I'm just wondering what it might look like because my family obviously has a budget and I'd like to make sure I'm not wasting your time and my time. And parents can help.
Yeah, you shouldn't be scared. Depending on which sport, a lot of times, like you were mentioning, the coach's first question is what's your budget? Only because, they know what they can work with or what type of budget they have for that year. So if you're looking for a full ride and they don't have any full rides available, then it's a quick, it's a quick yes or no answer if that's what you're looking for. So you'll find a lot of the times the coaches, first ask, what your budget is, and then if they can work around the budget, then, they're able to look at the other aspects, obviously.
So John, you talked about full ride there, which means, I want everything paid for. So I think a mistake that players make is sometimes they go in saying, I want a full ride, and they don't even realize that maybe they're not a kid that can get a full ride.
Right.
And so what that does is the coach is like, okay, I can't offer you that. And they may or may not tell you whether you're a full ride candidate or not. But that might deter the coach. So I think the way I like to go about it is, coach, I want to establish at least what the ballpark budget may look like or what your athletes normally get, someone like me, and then have them tell you so that then you can go back and say whether that sounds reasonable or not.
Right.
And it really, really, I can't emphasize enough how much it comes down to the parents knowing what their maximum amount that they'd be willing and able to spend, able to spend for a college for their child. Because the last thing you want to do is give your budget that you want to have. Like you said, the full ride, or I want to pay $5,000, because that may not even be remotely realistic at certain schools. So go about it the other way. Go about it where you ask the coach, tell them to come back to you with something, even if they don't have exact numbers. That's cool. You can tell them ballpark figure, just want to have an idea. And again, you have a good profile, you give them the information they need. They can tell you what they can give academically, financial aid, and athletically, if that's possible. And then there you go, and you can start to figure out the options.
Right.
Okay, so how about the next one? Having an open mind. So having an open mind, John, what do you think is important here?
Well, I think you should never cancel out schools. Okay, always take a look at all your options that are coming your way, unless if your major doesn't fit, or the finances we keep talking about, if it's doesn't fit your budget, or if the athletic level is too low. So let's just say they're going to put you on at the top of the roster, let's say, but you kind of want to be on a more competitive team. And also don't cancel out schools because of again, you're going to have your preferences at the end of the day, but just because you want to go to school in California, let's say, doesn't mean your best fit school isn't in Indiana waiting for you. So never cancel out options. Always, you have your target school list, like you were saying, keep them on there and just kind of check them off as they come in. But again, just don't cancel out schools because, they could be a right fit. Going back to my, when I went to New Mexico, when I got, an email from the coach from Western New Mexico, I'm like, I think I've heard of the state New Mexico only 4 times in my life prior to that, or maybe I saw it in a movie, but I'm just like, I'm definitely not going to go here. Could have been my first instinct, but I actually looked into it, went on the website, called the coach, talked with the coach, talked with a couple of the players, looked at their schedule, and, it ended up being the right fit. And I had, again, best 4 years of my life. So. Yeah.
So, I think it's important to understand the strategy.
Right.
As you said, you don't want to discount any schools. You're not going to judge a college by its cover. you're going to do your research, but you're going to take everything in. And as long as it meets that criteria of those top 3 factors that we talked about, then now you can build a large list, and then, you'll narrow it down. So coaches do the same thing. Athletes need to do the same thing coaches do. The strategy is build a big list and then start to narrow it down. Do not start by narrowing it down by what you think. There's many reasons, like John, you just mentioned. At the same time, it's a strategic move, because you want to keep, coaches are going to hit up a bunch of players. They're going to have a bunch of players on their list, because not every kid is going to commit with them. They're hoping to get 1 or 2 or a handful out of the 100 or 500 kids that they're contacting, depending how many roster spots they have open that they need to fill. So you're trying to get to one school. You need to keep as many coaches on your list and radar as colleges until you start figuring out what the opportunities may be, because you don't want to go and say no prematurely and then come back to them because they may or may not have the spot for you.
Right.
And you haven't done enough homework yet to make that decision. The only homework you've done is, this is my criteria. And if it doesn't meet, like I had mentioned, by a long distance, like they don't have what you want to study or remotely close, well, then obviously that's not a right fit. But if it's not obvious, you've got to put it on the list.
Right. Even when it comes to, athletically, let's say, so, just you always have to do your research. If, I knew back, again, when I was getting recruited, where my athletic ability was and where I kind of stand. So was I going after top 10 schools? Was I going after the Dukes and UCLAs of the tennis world? No, I wasn't, because, I did my research. I knew the type of players that they have and the caliber of players, the levels, and it was just out of my reach. So I wouldn't spend time trying to go after these coaches or trying to, see if I can get a scholarship there or whatever the case was. I was going after, schools that fit my criteria as far as where my tennis level was, and then, putting everything in place. And also on that point, like for all the student athletes that are using specific platforms out there, such as, ImRecruitable's platform, a lot of these coaches that are, viewing your profiles, contacting you or searching a player like you, 99% of the time, these are the schools that you actually fall in a good fit with. So these are the coaches that, know what they're looking for, and they know that you would, you can make their rosters. So these are the coaches that you should be contacting, and also not, discrediting in any way.
Yeah, you make some good points there. Not everybody is going to be as self-aware as yourself, who understood it better and really knew their level. I think some people are going to go and just still take a shot at it, and maybe that's their way of learning, which is fine. There's different ways.
It's not that I understood to begin with, because I didn't quite understand to begin with, but I knew kind of the thing that you do have to understand is that you have to do your research, right? So again, when I was a teenager, like I knew of only like the top, big name schools, watching March Madness basketball and so on. So I wanted to go to North Carolina, UCLA, your Dukes. And, when I started to do my recruiting process, other than talking with some people, some coaches or players at my level, maybe a year older, that were getting scholarship offers, or I know where they ended up going to school and I was on the same level, I kind of, balanced it out. I'm like, okay, so this is the level I'm at. Now I know that like UCLA is a complete, out of reach school that, even if I trained with top pros for the next 5 years, I might not be able to make. So,
but a lot of people, aren't that understanding or self-aware. And really, I feel like sometimes parents are less understanding than even the athletes. I see a lot of athletes going to their parents.
Right.
Their parents are like, hey, why don't you hit up some big, some SEC schools, some ACC schools? Why don't you hit up some, these schools? And it's like, and the kid goes, no, dad, like, I'm not that good. That's, so-and-so's level.
Right.
And then there's some players that don't want to really face the music, let's say. So that's kind of what I meant as well was like, that self-awareness, that understanding that it is sometimes tough, but if you have to do it, you have to take the emotion out of it, and you have to figure out where you fit by doing the research. But another point you made is that, now you have the platforms where the coaches, the market comes to you, and you throw your profile out there, and coaches can, show interest. And
Right.
so now you have a platform where you can literally figure out who's interested in you, what types of schools, what types of divisions, what types of level, because we didn't have that when we were growing up. And so I think it makes it that much easier. And so whoever's reaching out to you, I mean, I've seen kids' profiles on ImRecruitable, and they'll have, like, let's say 10 D1 schools looking at them. They're all coming from, majority of them are coming from the Patriot League, from certain conferences and leagues where they recruit those type of kids. SEC schools obviously are competing against each other, ACC schools competing. So you're likely, if you're getting interest from a few or several ACC schools, that you might get interest from majority of them. That's also very possible. Or SEC schools, because both those conferences are the, sort of some of the best of the best. So you're getting that information, but, I think that it's about understanding, like you said, the research going into it and looking at rosters, figuring it out, and also seeing what the market dictates.
Yeah, another good way to put it, like I was also mentioning myself, is if players that are, our athletes that are, a year or two, older than you, that have went somewhere on scholarship, let's say, or went somewhere to, play their sport, and you're at the same level, you can kind of, ask them also, who was recruiting them at the time. That's what I did. I had a player that I was the same level, a year older than me, and I just asked him. He gave me all his letters of schools that were interested, and kind of like put me at a certain level myself, where I kind of knew where I was at and schools that I would be able to get in contact with and that would have interest. So
yeah, you got to use all the resources possible. Right. You let the coaches, which is the market, show you where you belong as they come and preview your profiles and follow you and search you. You go and talk to other athletes who may be already there that can help you because they've got a better understanding.
Right.
Coaches can help you. And this is some of the, that goes on to what I was going to say next, which was some of these athletes, some of these sections like your athletics, academics, and financial side that we're talking about, is you can go to these coaches in your research as there's interest on both sides. And even if there isn't, actually, even if you reach out to a coach and there isn't interest, a lot of coaches, if you ask them, will give you some more information, like, do you think I can play in the conference and stuff? And maybe it's like, yeah, not for my team, but there's the bottom of the conference you might be able to get into. Or, if you're going to schools that there is mutual interest, you got to start asking and doing the research by asking the coach, okay, where do you see me fit in your team? Like, what are your plans for me? Do you see me as a starter, and so on, and see
right.
if what the coach is saying aligns with your goals. On the academic side, you want to dig a little bit deeper, and not so you've established maybe that they have your major or the area of study you want to have, but you got to look beyond, like, what are the classes like? What are the professors like? What kind of teaching styles do they have? What type of partnerships and internship job opportunities do these schools have for me? And during and after my college career, what kind of alumni network do they have? I think that we forget about doing those things, and that will help you make the right choice. The last thing is on the financial side. So, you may not get all the information from coaches right up front. So you might have to investigate more. Okay, on the financial aid side, a lot of schools have the net price calculator. So can I go in and put in my financials on the net price calculator on the school's website? And can I get a number to get an idea of what it might cost me to go to school there? Okay, is there academic scholarships? Schools have on their websites how you can qualify for academic scholarships. I mean, some schools write it very plainly. You have this X GPA and Y SAT or ACT score that automatically qualifies you for, say, $1,500 next year. There are other scholarships you can apply for that people forget to. There was one kid that I knew he went to North Florida. I'm good friends with one of the coaches there. And, he told the kid, hey, you should apply for this presidential scholarship because you've got the credentials. And so make sure you submit the application. The kid did, and he got an extra, I think, $5,000 or $6,000 a year, which is a lot of money. So doing that research, figuring all those things out will get you to then narrow down the list, right?
Right.
So that goes into here, are finding your fit. So how are you going to do it? Narrowing down your list by doing all the stuff we just talked about. And, how many schools should really you narrow down your list to make sort of a finalist list? Well, that depends on each athlete, but you got to have at least 2. Even if you've pretty much dead set on one school after that initial phase, I truly believe you need to have at least a comparative school with you. And a lot of kids will put anywhere from like sort of 3 to 5, because now you're going to start making visits and engaging more with coaches and putting in some more time, effort, possibly money, whether it's a coach paying for the trip or you paying. You've got to look at a handful of schools. Anything is achievable. Some people put more. There's no real set number on this. People ask me all the time, like, what is a number? There's no number, but you also don't want to be going after 20 schools. Like, that's not narrowing it down. You got to come down to a group of schools that's manageable to dig deeper.
Yep.
So like engagement's very important, to engage with these coaches, get to know them better, get to know the team better by trying to talk to them and finding them on social and telling them, you're super interested and you're trying to figure out which school you can go to. And then, also figuring out more with the college. So, I know you're big on engagement, Jon.
Yeah, really big. You just got to stay engaged, from the beginning, but especially when you're narrowing down your schools, make sure, you're staying engaged with the coaches, the players on the team, anything to do with the school. I mean, you're picking a school that you're going to be going to for 4 years. So you might be living with some of the players on the team. You're going to be seeing them every day, practicing, traveling. You're going to be talking to your coach every single day. This is a big part of your life. So just always stay engaged with the team, the coaches, and, again, just do your research and make sure it's going to be the right fit for you. Even, on campus, cafeteria where you're going to be eating, the dorms, there's just so much to it. So especially, again, when you're narrowing down those choices, obviously visits, once you start making some visits, these are kind of a make or break for you. I've seen people that, or athletes that have been recruited to specific schools. They think it's their top choice. They take a trip there, or they, start talking with some of the players or the coach, and, they end up, saying it's the wrong spot for me, and they end up going somewhere where they didn't think they were initially going to go to, but, they took that visit, they enjoyed everything about the school. And so, yeah, it's a big choice to make. So again, stay engaged and do your research.
Yeah. Make those visits. You'd be surprised at how many different schools operate differently. And what they say, and, the coach is definitely going to sell you. The coaches are going to sell you.
Right.
They're going to want you to come there. When you make those visits, staying on campus with the players, I highly recommend that athletes get time, either make the trip on your own, or if you go with parents, to have the opportunity to stay with the players, in the dorms if possible, or at the very least have alone time, and even have alone time with the players outside of the coaches to ask them, what they think about the coaching staff and the program and, the good and the bad, and ask more than one person and ask more than one set of group, because, depending on how big the team is, you may have a group of guys or girls that are, pro head coach, pro the team, pro the school, and some that are, not so much. And it could be for a number of reasons. Maybe they're not getting playing time. Maybe they're not, it's just not a good fit for them, and for whatever reason. So ask the different groups, understand that people have their opinions, make your own judgment at the end, but certainly take everything in.
Yeah. Sorry, just to jump in quickly, just because of the time we're in right now with the curveball, with the COVID that got thrown at us, hopefully not for too much longer. But for those, going to school either fall or for spring, if, these visits aren't allowed, yet at some of these campuses. You know, it doesn't mean you can't stay engaged, right? We have Zoom calls, you know, with the players, with the coaches. You can do virtual tours of the school. You know, some of these schools have amazing virtual tours on their websites. It pretty much brings you into every single department, even, you know, the cafeterias. It brings you into the dorms. So, you know, and if some of them don't have it, you can even ask the coach that is on campus, you know, can you take some videos and send it to me? So again, you know, just stay engaged that way at this time.
Yeah, no, you make a good point, because there are times when you can't make visits.
Right.
Obviously, I'm a huge fan of it. You know, sometimes I've seen kids who are so late in the process they can't do it. But obviously, I encourage everyone to start as soon as possible. Don't put yourself in that position if you can avoid it. But in situations like COVID or other situations that may come up and you can't make it on campus, yeah, you can make the most of it to make the best decision. You just have to work a little harder for it.
Right.
So last thing on this is decision making. Jon, what are your thoughts on how you make a good decision?
Or just referring back on, you know, everything we talked about, your specific preferences, and, you know, just helping you narrow down your final choices there, whether it's by location, size of school, climate, you know, how you get along with the team or the coach. So again, you know, finding or making the criteria. So, you know, your finances, your athletics and academics, once that's all set in stone and you have your 2 to 5 schools that you're kind of narrowing it down to, just, you know, this is where your preferences come into play and you can kind of break them down as well.
Yeah. The negotiables, non-negotiables.
Right.
You're not going to get everything that you want. So I like making
you can, but I mean, you know.
Well, you can, yeah, you can, but usually you're not, and that's
right.
the truth. So pros and cons lists are great. You know, throw it down. You know, do it on a whiteboard, do it on a piece of paper, whatever you want to do. Go through it with your family and everybody who's involved in helping you with the recruiting process. I think it's important to get everybody's input. Ultimately, the student athlete makes the decisions. The parents, listen up, let your kid make the decision. They are going to school. It's where they want to go. If they are in charge of their process and they are taking the lead from the beginning, then they will make the right choice because they'll have all the information and the knowledge and the expertise then on each of those universities. But this is where the family gets together and, you know, helps with that and definitely give the guidance that's needed. I think very quickly when you make that list, again, like you can talk about it. And I think a lot of people like to talk about, oh, this looks good, but don't. Put it down on paper, put everything down, because it could look different than what you're discussing on the surface. And right. You got to understand that it's a big decision. So, you know, this is a lifetime decision. You know, you are making a choice that will shape your future. So, if you've done your research, if you've gone through the steps and the athlete's done the work, then most times there's an outright winner. And if not, it's a tie between two, and then it's a good problem to have. I think that, you know, most athletes figure out that there's a place in their heart. They realize, okay, this is the place I want to be. And it just makes everything so much easier through the process, because you're going to have that winner and you're going to be very comfortable, confident, and excited with your choice. You don't want to be the athlete that makes a commitment for the wrong reasons or because you've been pressured or any of the other things. Like, you want to make the choice because you truly believe in your heart that this is the right place for you, because you've gone through the steps.
Right.
And if you haven't, then it's going to be a really tough choice. And that's where kids end up transferring a lot. And I'll just make clear that, like, for me, I transferred for 2 reasons. One is I suffered a severe shoulder injury, and I was, you know, just a sophomore at the time. So I had the rest, you know, to at least half my college career to go to. And I could have stayed, but it wasn't going to help me or work out for me. So I had to find a team where I could play, you know, a little bit, but not a lot. And I had to find a place where I started to think about, well, there's a career after sports for me. There's a career in business, a career in life. And I wanted to find a place where I could get internships and stuff like that. And New Mexico, just for what I was studying and what I wanted to do, wasn't going to give me those opportunities. So it was a tough decision for me. But I think for a lot of other kids who transfer out, it's because they just haven't got to understand what that university offers, and they've gone to the wrong place and they're not happy with it. So they're jumping the gun, and it can be a very stressful process, because for me, it was super stressful. I don't know if you remember, Johnny, we were so young, but I was stressed like crazy. I mean, I didn't want to leave. I was having the time of my life. But even though I had the option to stay and keep everything, my scholarship, everything, it's not like I was losing anything, right? I was, like, coach was almost, in some way begging me to stay, because he wanted me to be there and be on the team, because I could perform well. But
well, I thought you transferred because you had a 0-15 record against me. That's what I always thought all these years. But I mean, you had your other reasons.
That's a lie, by the way. That's a lie. It's a lie. Although you did get in my head pretty good. But no, the real reason was for those reasons, exactly. And it's stressful. So if you can avoid transferring, that's great. Obviously, there's situations like mine where you can't avoid it, and it's a better thing to do.
One thing I see a lot going on the transferring is I've talked to parents before, like student athletes. You never want to initially pick a school already with the mindset of I'm going to transfer out after a year. Okay, I know it happens quite a bit, but it's not your ideal situation. You always want to go to a school where, again, finding the right fit where you truly think you belong for 4 years. Now, if something happens along those 4 years, obviously you can transfer out or whatever the case is, but you don't want the mentality of going into a school and like, yeah, okay, I'll just go here for like a year, but I'll transfer out because I know for whatever reason, whether it's your athletic ability, you're going to get better and you just want to get out of there to begin with, right? So
yeah, I agree. Don't make a decision. Don't go to a school if you not really want to go there. And if you really want to go somewhere else, then you have to be, are you willing to give up your sport?
Right.
Are you willing to give up your sport? And I think that's actually a huge point, because academics, as we've talked about, plays a huge role.
The biggest.
Pretty much school, it's school first, right? College sports again. So, if you can academically get into a school that you can't play for, you've got to decide on that at some point, whether you're willing to go to a school that you can do both at versus the school where you can only do one. And that school where you can just study at may be the higher ranked school, the more brand name school that everybody knows around the country and around the world. But it's going to come at some sacrifice. And if that's the case, that's fine. And there are athletes that choose that. But like you said, you don't want to go with the mindset of being like, okay, well, I want to be here, but I'll start here. And then after a year, I'm going to get there.
Like, I see that decision, the academic road. Sometimes that decision, it's usually made really late in the recruiting process. So again, when you're narrowing down your schools, discussing it with your family, and then you kind of, make that final decision on, look, I'm not that you're going to stop playing your sport, but, you might end up going to a school where you can't play on the team, but, the academics are, that much better for you. And you're just going to end up taking that road and then maybe a walk-on spot or a tryout or whatever the case is. But usually these decisions are made really late. It's kind of like a last-minute decision. Sometimes it happens, but ultimately, you're trying to find somewhere where you can, get that college experience, play your sport, and get a good degree.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I think that concludes episode 4 of ImRecruitable TV. This was a very, very good discussion, John. I think there's a lot to discuss on this topic because it's such a big one. But,
right.
It's all about finding the right fit to make sure that you have a great college career. It has, I can't tell people how much it has shaped my life, and it has made me who I am. I mean, everything from, first of all, I wish I was still there. And we talk about that all the time. At the same time, I'm in the business I'm in for that reason. I have the friends I have and the connections and the opportunities. It has really, if you find a good opportunity it is priceless.
Right.
That experience, right? So,
100%.
all right. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time.
All right. Happy recruiting, everyone.